Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is creating unity through music. That's a good mission. And here today, tonight actually, this is the first time that we are podcasting from Music Night at the home of Tara Gorman. But I do have the distinct pleasure to talk this evening with someone who feels like a brother from another mother, a fabulous musician, great friend. We've talked about a lot of stuff, and I hope we can talk about some stuff tonight. Scott Castonguay. Scott, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm thrilled to be here, as always. As always.
You've been playing music all day. You're tired. You're sitting down now.
Tired.
It's good.
A 2-hour gig today from 6 to 8. It was in the sun.
Ooh, in the sun. Did you have shade?
It was hot, humid. We did have shade, but it was hot and humid.
Good.
I didn't eat anything.
Oh.
And, you burn into the reserve sometimes if you do that, and you feel fine during the gig. You feel fine while you're playing. And then afterwards, we're packing up. And as I'm driving over here, it starts sinking in. I'm really tired and I'm really hungry.
I know.
I can feel my blood sugar was low and I needed, I was starting to get lightheaded and the headache was starting to hit me. But it's gone. I'm good now. I had some food, had some tea, I guess.
You did have food. I think you told me you had food. So you're ready to go.
Tea. I'm ready to go. Although I'm still tired, but I'm here.
So
it's good energy.
We met through, I don't exactly know, but it is the way that it is, through maybe at Tara's house?
Right here, Music Night.
Music Night.
This is where it all happens.
Okay, I have a feeling that, you were friends of Jamie and that's how you came over here, or Bo?
Friends with Bo. Bo and Jamie are old buddies.
Okay.
And Bo had a couple parties, and Jamie and Tara had both come out to those parties, and that's where I met them. And then Tara invited us all out to these parties, and that's history. Now it's
because
I've only missed like 2, I think, since she started having these.
It's amazing to me because, I have talked with Bo on the podcast, and Jamie and Tara, and we're blessed. Everybody's blessed really with a community of people, but this music community that we have is pretty fabulous.
Absolutely.
So. You play guitar mostly now. I think that's your instrument. I guess you may play other instruments, but how did music kind of come up in your life? Did your father or mother play? Did you listen to Beatles records? Where did music come from in your life, and what was sort of the trajectory? Were you young? Did you take lessons? How did music get to you?
Well, it was interesting. At a young age, my family lived in Puerto Rico.
Huh.
We lived in Puerto Rico. I was 3 years old and went to elementary school there. We lived there, for me, I was there about 5.5 years. But I just remember the school that I went to, Antilles Elementary School. Hopefully they're still there.
Antilles Elementary School.
Just go right off.
Nice name for a school.
Right outside, it was right outside of San Juan, Old San Juan, and Antilles was on the military base, Fort Buchanan. So we lived right next to the base. We went to school on the base, Antilles, and I just remember I was exposed to live music, So the elementary school, Antilles, they would have performers come in every so often and do a performance for us.
What sort of?
Well, funny you should ask. So the other side of this is my parents. Okay, so my mother sings and plays piano. My father, none of that. He's non-musical, right? So, but she didn't have a piano, and I didn't hear her sing much growing up at that stage. But they had records, and records were novel. This is the 60s.
33s, 78s?
LPs, long play. So 33s.
Yep.
And so, but they had records, and as a kid, it was a novelty to me to be able to put a record onto a record player, put the needle on it, and hear this music come out of it, And so
it's kind of magical when you think about it.
So I loved listening to my parents' records. I didn't know anything about music. I was 6, 7, 8 years old, and like these were records like Zorba the Greek, soundtrack to Zorba the Greek. There was some Mexican symphony with a lot of Spanish music. There was some old jazz recordings. One was J.R. Montrose, which I didn't understand because it was modern jazz and it was over my head, so it didn't appeal.
The other one can be over a lot of people's heads.
Well, I mean, it was that one record, so that was all they had of bebop, or post bebop. But literally everything else they had, and like. I remember they had Herb Albert and his Tijuana Brass. So I all that hit stuff Herb Albert had. I heard as a little kid.
That was one of my favorite songs growing up. Well, particularly the album cover with the woman with the
yeah. I mean that stuff.
And the whipped cream on the cover.
But listen, man. I mean all of the above. I mean it was this being exposed to music at school, being exposed to my parents' records, and it was just a joy. My little brother and I, we put a record on. And the soundtrack to Zorba the Greek has got this one tune on there that's a traditional song, and it starts out really slow with the mandolins, and so we listened to that, okay, and we dug it, I think, because of the line, the mandolin line, the way it sounded. It was kind of cool, but also what we loved was the fact that it sped up, right? So we love that. So we put that on. We put that on.
It's like a Mexican hat dance or something.
So we put that on, and we would move to it. We didn't know what we were doing. We just would put the music on.
And you're how old? This is
6, 7 years old.
Oh my God!
We'd put this stuff on, and my brother and I would start dancing to it. And of course, so what do? As that piece increases in tempo, we get to go faster and faster. So we loved it. It was great. So my point is that my parents had these records, and we loved listening to them. And it was a thrill. I didn't know style or anything. I just was listening to whatever they had because it was interesting. On top of that, we had TV, and so all the TV shows, there's a lot of great music going on with the TV shows back in that era. Mid to late 60s, hearing all those TV shows, Batman, Star Trek, all that stuff. Yeah, just all that music. So all those theme songs were going in, and imprinting. And they were good songs.
Island.
Yeah, but like... So then the school, they would have performances, and my parents had this one record that was really, really grabbed my attention. Okay, and it was the United States Navy Steel Band. Okay, steel pan music. Steel drums.
I know.
So they actually have this military band down there at Fort Buchanan that plays Caribbean, steel pan music, but what they did was they adapted it all to like modern popular music and orchestral music.
I remember that.
And they were phenomenal. So they came, so their record, my parents had their record and I loved it, but not only that, but they came to our school because we're right there at the base, so they came to our school and performed for us. And to me, at that age, they were my rock stars, right? I'm hearing this record, I'm loving it. And then, they came to the school. They're here. Whoa, and they're right there. And I get to see the whole thing. And they played all this music. And it just overwhelmed. My only thought was, it made me happy, okay? Hearing all this music made me happy. But my main thought was, I want to do that.
I want to do that.
I want to do that. I want to do that.
And that's what happens with musicians.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
I want to make that music.
So what was the next step? You didn't go out and get a steel drum?
Well,
did you?
I wanted it so bad. I don't know what I must have said, but my parents bought me a little steel drum. I got a little steel pan, and it was real. It was small, but it was it's kid size, but it was real. It really worked. So I could bang on it and hit the different notes. So I actually had a steel pan, and I played back then.
That is wild.
I don't know that I was any good, but I tinkered with it and I kind of played around. To me it was golden. It was I love that sound.
I love that sound. So, but you didn't take lessons in steel drum. You went on to, did you?
No, but God, I wish I had, man, because I was only
I'm
like
sorry
7
to bring
or 8
it up.
years old.
I don't want you to feel like, guilty and remorseful about it.
I missed out.
But did you take lessons in grade school or going up, or what happened after the steel drum incident?
So the other thing, I got to fill in the gaps here because that was influencing me. That wasn't the only bit. They brought in other artists to come to perform at our school, and it always blew me away. Not only that, my brother and sister were older. They went to the elementary school, but then we had neighbors who we were friends with, and they were in the high school, and he played. He was a musician. So I just remember this guy that was like, he was probably a teenager then, but he was a surfer, dude, and he played in a band.
Ooh.
Now his band, they're like 4 houses down from us. His band would practice in the garage. So all those little kids go, stand outside. They had their garage door closed.
Garage band groupies.
Well, yeah, and but they had it covered so you couldn't see. But we'd stand there outside and listen to them. And I just remember the backbeat, the standard blues R&B backbeat that I was hearing, and I would just start singing that all the time to myself and grinding it with my teeth. I would play rhythms with my teeth, So I got the bug of music in me. It's just everywhere I heard it, it was inspiring me. I wanted to do it.
Well, you were receptive to it.
Yeah, and I wanted to be around it, though. It was there. And then, so the school performances were big. We would go sometimes to the high school. The high school did shows back then. They blew me away, man. They had, like jazz band or stage band in high schools, and back at that school, they were really good. And this was late 60s, and they were playing all this R&B, funk stuff, soul music that I didn't know. I didn't know what it was, but it blows me away. I'm seeing this performance, and they're like black lights. They got the white, the white gloves and the white. They're doing the whole. It was wild.
Right. So did you pick up guitar soon after that, or?
So that was.
Or did you pick up another instrument?
I was 8 years old at that time, and then a few years later,
you had a lot.
We
going
moved
on
to the States. We moved to this area, to Northern Virginia. My father got transferred over, so we came here. My father was government, and so we came to the States, and then elementary school. You reach a certain age. I think it's 4th or 5th grade when you're old enough to play a band instrument, and so I wanted to. It was my first opportunity to start doing that, and of course, I've been chomping at the bit all along. I wanted that. Oh, also, in Puerto Rico, Christmas is huge. The holidays are huge, right? People went caroling regularly, and then they'd show up at your door and they carol, and you give them a little money, so.
Christmas songs are great.
So, but these were Spanish, Caribbean Christmas songs.
They must be good too.
And so, but we had some Latino friends of my father's, and we were good, our families were good friends, and they were fluent in Spanish. We were starting to learn, but we were learning fast. And we would go Christmas caroling with our small group, and we'd sing these Christmas carols, these Spanish Christmas carols, and I would play the gourd, what you call it.
Percussion kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I was just imitating, but I was learning. This was, so I'm starting to learn this stuff, Anyway, it gets into you, So we come to the States, and then, change schools, get older, but 4th grade, 5th grade.
It gets more stressful in the United States.
Yeah, well, it was a shock, it was a culture shock to me, because I knew nothing but Puerto Rico, and it was, anyway, so there's a school band, and it's, you're old enough to be in band now. What instrument do you want to play? Well, my parents had this sort of Dixieland swing jazz record that I loved, that I listened to, and it had, all the Dixieland stuff going on, and I loved that, the improvisation, and that really grabbed my attention. Saxophones, clarinets, trumpets, everything. But I wanted to play clarinet because I loved the clarinet player on there, and so that was my first choice. But I don't remember why, but instead of clarinet, I got saxophone, I think, because that's all...
That's the instrument they had.
That's what they had room for, I guess. So I got a saxophone, I got an alto, and started on that. And then I played that for about 3 years.
Did you learn to read music?
I'm sorry?
Did you learn to read music at that point?
I was reading music, yeah. I mean, in band you learn how to read music, and
but you're only 11.
Yeah, and 10, I think, and I think it was either 4th, 5th. I think it was 5th grade, but I played for maybe it was 4th. I was learning how to read, but I was also listening to my parents' record, right? So I had the sound of saxophone and jazz in my ears already. And, of course, all the TV shows and everything, there's a lot of jazz and R&B and blues. So I'm hearing all of that stuff. And I'm able to... So what I would do is I would sit in my room with the saxophone. I'd have my stuff I was supposed to practice, and it would be kind of easy. But then I would start practicing on my own, just exploring the instrument, and I would start to find phrases like riffs and ideas that I had heard that were stuck in my mind. I started to find them on the instrument.
Oh my God!
And that's when I began to realize, I think my parents began to realize I kind of had an aptitude for this thing.
I was just getting potty trained at that point. I mean,
it's a language,
Yeah.
It's a language. So that went on for about 3 or 4 years. I played saxophone. Come 8th grade, So I played 5th grade through 8th grade, or 4th grade through 8th grade, so 3 or 4 years. I loved it. I did those summer band things. I did that, and I was probably going to play band in high school had we not moved. But my sister had started taking guitar, and I hit puberty.
Oh, that's what happened.
Yeah, I was 13. And
man, your sister's got a guitar. You hit puberty. What are you going to do?
Well, and she's listening to rock, okay?
Oh,
and I'm
okay.
starting.
That's what happened.
I'm starting to be exposed to popular music and rock as I'm getting it close to puberty, and I'm starting to discover rock radio, DC 101, WPGC.
You might be able to be a rock star, Scott.
All these radio stations in the DC area that used to play all this old back in the late early 70s.
Yeah.
And so it transformed me, and I lost.
What was the first guitar you got?
It was an electric. No, was it a con? I still have it. It's a con acoustic. It's a steel string acoustic, big dreadnought. It was great. It was a great guitar. It was
And
a
what
great
kind of
starter
music
guitar.
were you playing?
So I went from the jazz stuff and my parents' records and all that, and I started to discover pop music, and a couple of things caught my ear. Right away. I had a little clock radio I used to keep above my head in my bed, and I would listen to DC 101 had a program back then.
I listened to those transistor radios.
Yeah, this is a
God.
little clock radio right above the head.
I listened to a lot of Washington Senators games myself, but
Well, this is so the radio
and
station.
Winx, WINX,
Yeah, that rings a bell.
WPGC.
Yeah, WPG. Well, so DC 101
Yeah.
had a program back then that came on at midnight, and they would feature an album, a new release, an album. They play the whole album, and they would call it the King Biscuit Flower Hour. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, King Biscuit Flower. So I'm listening one night, and Pink Floyd had just released Animals. I didn't have a clue who Pink Floyd was, but I'm like, oh, interesting. And so I'm laying there in my bed, and Animals starts playing, and I just was mesmerized. It's a double record set. It's like an hour and a half. It's like long, okay. But I listened to the whole thing, man. I was like on cloud 9.
Roger Waters will just make your head explode.
Well, it was everything. It was all the different aspects. I mean, it's still my favorite album that they did to this day. But that grabbed my attention in a big way, And then other artists who grabbed my attention, I was starting to get exposed to Jimi Hendrix. He was an eye-opener, an ear-opener. I was a fan of like Southern rock. I like
Allman
Leonard
Brothers?
Well, Allman Brothers, but I like Leonard Skinner better at the time. At that age, I like Leonard Skinner because a couple of their songs, Freebird, really grabbed my ear. When I heard that on the radio, and then I listened to that bombastic live ending, I was playing air guitar by that time. I was already, getting the fever. And I had friends who were turning me on to getting into Zeppelin, and I was hearing all these other rock bands.
So when did you go out and join your first band, or when did you start playing out? I mean, you started all this pretty early. So in your late teens, were you gigging already? Were you in bands?
We had moved from this area down to South Carolina between my 8th grade and my 9th, my freshman year in high school. And that's when I switched I quit the band and I quit saxophone and I switched to guitar. And I felt when I went to my parents and I said I wanted to make that switch and start taking guitar lessons, they were fine with it. Mm-hmm. But I had the mistaken impression that I had to choose at the time. And I wish I hadn't done that, because I would have continued playing the sax had I known that I didn't have to choose.
Right.
So, but I made that choice. I made the switch. We moved to South Carolina, and I found it very hard to make new friends down there for whatever reason,
So then you woodshedded in your...
Well, I woodshedded. I did make friends eventually.
Musical friends?
Yes, and I had one down the road from me, walking distance, in my neighborhood. We became good friends. His name was David Hodges, and very cool kid. He was ahead of me on the guitar. And he had some musical tastes and interests that I hadn't been exposed to. So
you jammed with him?
I jammed with him, and he had a little more experience than me. But my first experience with the jam was watching him and a buddy, Mike Davis, I think his name was, the bass player. We were all big fans of Rush at the time. We got way into the rock band Rush, and so they knew some of their tunes, and I was learning. But they would play. They'd get together and jam, and I'd hang out, and I was just kind of, I want to do that, Actually, I had instances before that in Virginia, before moving, that summer before moving, hanging out with some of my delinquent friends. One of them played guitar, and we hung out in his room, and he played, guitar, and it just always grabbed I just wanted to do it. Seeing these guys do this, I'm just like, I want that. That's so cool.
So fast forward. So I'm sure that you were playing a ton, and you get out of college or whatever into your 20s, and what was your? I mean, you teach music now, don't you?
Yeah, it wasn't my plan. It wasn't the plan.
That wasn't the plan from the get-go?
The plan was to perform, man.
Perform.
Always wanted to perform. When I started going to college, my idea was I chose to be a performance major.
You majored in performance
music. I was enrolled in the music degree program, and I was going to be a performance major. It never got that far because I faded away from college.
And how did you end up in teaching? Because that's what you've done. Is your career, is your vocation, avocation, whatever, is it playing and teaching?
Yeah.
And did teaching grow on you, and now you don't want to be doing anything else, or?
Sort of. I mean, I kind of evolved into it. So in my early days of guitar, I had different guitar instructors over the years. I had probably 6 or 7 altogether in the end, when I add them all up. And they all had they were all kind of different stylistically, different sort of levels. I mean, the last one was by far the best. He was a famous jazz guitarist. He's out there now. That whole experience taking lessons influenced me in that respect because, when you take a lot of lessons, you have an understanding. You've been exposed to the process. Hopefully you've had some good teachers, but you learned the process. So my intent was never to teach, but it became very natural. I fell into it naturally.
What is it that you like about teaching guitar?
The sharing of knowledge. And to me, it's sort of like there's a joy that is in the process of learning and playing music. There's a joy there. There's nothing else like it, and so that joy, I feel like when I'm teaching, if I've got a student who's interested or somewhat interested, then it's really a joyful thing for me to help them learn about the language of music, and develop. How do you do that? How do you? It's such an amazing language. How do you help someone learn music? I mean, you guide the way. You guide the way. You show them examples of what works for you, what works for your other students. Everyone's a little bit different, and you just be there as a guide to help them find their way. But there are basics with any instrument, technical basics. To the basic, like the mechanics of playing, the technique that is involved in that to develop the facility. So you have to address that. That stuff has to be developed to varying degrees, but it depends on the student. Not all students are ready for everything all at once. When I first started getting into teaching, it was more out of necessity, but it was sort of like the opportunity came. And it was, I love to play, and I can teach and make money, and it was really a no-brainer for me. I can go teach private lessons and make money instead of having a part-time job that I hate. I can do that and make money.
I kind of wish, Scott, that more people would really, make that call, get that evaluation. So, we have spoken. Ever since I've known you somehow about kind of the spiritual aspects of music. So you've had hundreds of students. You played hundreds of gigs. You played with many, many musicians. What is it about music? Why do people get together and sing and play together? And what does that mean? What does it do to them? Well,
I think music is a language of the heart. It's a language of feelings. It's not a, what's the word? Literal. It's not a literal language with actual words, but it's musical phrases and ideas and compositions and things that represent feelings it emotes these feelings to us, and we share these feelings without words, right? So
music is sort of sharing feelings without words.
Yeah.
I mean, they're words and songs, but still.
In a sense, but there's a kind of a, when you think about it in terms of the language of music, there's a geometry to the structure of music that, I don't know. I mean, you could look at it from a philosophical point of view and say that sort of structure, it's physics, and it's sort of like, it's this property of physics that allows us to have music the way it is, but there's math there, there's real math as far as how it works. And there are certain frequencies that have certain effects on us. So we know that sound has a deep effect on us, period, on all living things, but music on humans in particular, And so I think that music probably goes back to our earliest days as a species, as we were, probably started as, well, I mean, we make sounds, right? And we hear the sounds of nature and think of it as music. So human beings are no different. And we probably were screaming and grunting and groaning like we hear our ape cousins doing. And eventually, someone discovered that banging a stick on a log makes a sound. And somewhere along the way, at some point, some individual had to go, and started keeping a steady beat. Okay?
Yeah.
And that was like inventing the wheel. That was probably a momentous occasion in human history when some human animal discovered that, you can keep a steady beat, and there's a certain feeling to that,
That's very profound to me, because there are people who've said music may have been what have made humans the way we are. That led us to be this species that could build buildings and bombs and cars and do all kinds of amazing stuff. And there's also, humans are really the only ones who keep a beat. There are some animals that keep a beat, and there are things in nature that go on rhythms, of course. But keeping a predictive, multi-tempo sort of beat, it's kind of human. And so what you're saying is somebody,
but there's rhythm in nature,
figured that out.
Well, there's rhythm in nature, and I'm thinking is that we're just the extension of that. We're still nature.
Yes.
We are the universe. We're still the universe.
That's right.
We're just at this far end of the evolutionary scale compared to other animal species on this planet. Mm-hmm. And I think that's in other words, if it wasn't humans, if it was, let's say, raccoons that evolved to be the smartest species on the planet,
mm-hmm.
I think they would have had their own kind of music eventually. I think any species that evolves to a higher level is going to have some form of music, because I think it's built into the fabric of the universe.
Yeah, like bees dancing or mice singing.
Yeah.
But so it has been very special for humans, for us. I mean, you have really seen the power of music in your life. Your life has been about the power of music. Now, with the issues and things that we have, what do we need to do? How do we need to tap into this music thing?
I don't know that there's anything we need to do other than what we already do. Maybe just more of it.
More of it.
More
gigs around the planet.
Yeah, more gigs.
That's what Planetary Gig Society is all about. Music nights. More music nights.
More music
Here we
nights.
are at music night.
More music events. More free music for the public.
Free music.
I think that we take for granted. And again, for me, growing up, I was exposed to a lot of free music, and that was hugely beneficial for me. And people that I know who have grown up around music and become professional musicians, some of our greatest artists and greatest stars who did that, it's because they're around it all the time, and I think that's what needs to happen. Now, having said all that, just because someone is a great artist, a great musician, doesn't mean that they're spiritually evolved. That was a hard lesson for me. I used to believe that. I used to think that if it's a great musician, they must be a great human being and highly evolved spirit. Not necessarily. Maybe there was some aspect of their being that is evolved with the music, but then other parts of their life is maybe a mess. Charlie Parker's an example of that.
Yeah. Well, it's a beguiling kind of a thing, and you get into it, and it's complex and it's intriguing, and it just pulls you, and it's like home almost.
Yeah. Well, I think music is it's a reflection, or it's an expression of our humanity, and And all of the good and the bad and everything in between is expressed in the music. I try to be non-judgmental with whether this is good music or bad music. It's all good in a sense, but there's certain standards and certain ways of doing things that if you want to be considered a real good player, you have to develop things to a certain level before you're accepted as being,
Right.
at a certain level. And I think most of us have intuition enough to know when we hear musicians who have some good basic fundamentals versus some who do not. Like some musicians who might be trying to learn how to play, and they have very bad time, very bad rhythm, and so when they play with people, it doesn't gel all that well. So music isn't always great, right? But it's still a joy. It's still a blast to partake in because we're sharing the experience. And I think that's, to me, the beauty in the where the rubber meets the rubber meets the road, spiritually speaking, when you're talking about music and spirituality. I think it's that shared experience. Certainly the frequencies and the music itself, can take you to a sublime place and, be great for meditative or whatever. But I think more than anything, it's that shared experience.
The shared experience, the learning about our commonality.
Well, but remember what I said about as a kid, just the hearing the music and just wow, and then I want to do that. Well, there was a kind of a joy in the music that I was hearing, and when I play music, I feel a lot of that joy. And so, to me, when I play music with other people or with an audience, I feel like I'm sharing that joy. And then they respond, with cheers or clapping, and then it's feedback, and then it's that circular feedback loop of sharing the joy of the music. And to me, that's what it's about, whether it's just a group of musicians or musicians and patrons, fans, either way, it's that feedback loop of sharing the music and sharing the joy.
I guess it's co-creating joy then.
Yes. Yeah.
Music is sort of co-creating joy in a way that, being an accountant or a lawyer, whatever, it's something innate in us. It is us, and we can co-create joy and love, and peace. And not everybody, as you say, who plays music, that's where their head is at, but it certainly gives us an avenue.
Yeah. I mean, it takes us away, like now I'm hearing these guys in here, and I'm hearing a song. People get ready.
I'm hearing some song. Oh, you hearing that?
And like, I'm familiar with that song, and it's fun to play. I used to play it in a wedding band, and it's just one of those feel-good songs, And
so, just to begin to, just to kind of explain to people who are not at music night, we're here at Tara's house, the goddess of awesomeness of the Planetary Gig Society. And there's music going on in 3 or 4 different locations in the house. Not a giant house, but it's a welcoming house, and there's music in different ways, and you can go to one room and another, and when you say hello to somebody, when you see somebody, you just kind of almost want to hug them.
It's back to the sharing. It's to me, that's what this is all about. This music, Michael D. Bloom Music Night, is a beautiful thing. It took me a couple of times to learn what it was all about.
Yeah.
But, her deceased husband, Michael D. Bloom, was a musician, and apparently and you knew him, and this is what
I didn't know him. I never met him.
You didn't know? You didn't know?
No.
So, but apparently this is one of the things he did. As we all us musicians do. We have musician friends, and we get together, we gather, and we do this, and so he did, and so it's a beautiful thing what she did, because she wanted to continue this so her kids can experience it and
her kids are fabulous musicians, and she has brought music to so many people. Yep. And as you said, we met here, we've made so many friends here through music. So that's kind of what the Planetary Gig Society is about, making connections through music. But I believe this intention that we can have a good life. We can have good lives together. Yeah. We want to have good lives together.
Despite the adversity.
It's important, despite the adversity. Yeah, because we can have a whole other podcast talk about the politics of things, but we won't. So I think I'm just going to say, Scott, I've wanted to talk with you for a long time. This has been a fabulous conversation. We may need to have another one, but really, really great. I enjoyed hearing about your life growing up with music, how much it's meant to you. So just thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure, Jeff. Anytime, man. We'll do it again. We'll do it again.
That's
I
great.
could talk for hours about this stuff.
Yeah, me too, obviously. Thanks very much.
All right, man.
Scott Castonguay, everybody. You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.